Awesome. Welcome to another episode of How to Make It in Toronto. I'm super excited for today's episode. We have an entrepreneur, a leader, a game changer in the industry. We have Miss Rosemary Cescolini here today from Royal Door. We're going to be jumping into a lot of great topics, a lot about change as well, and a lot of, how to really, either influence or, build a great career as well. So for today, let's welcome Rosemary Cescolini.
Thank you so much, Carl. It is, an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. And I am so pumped to talk about my personal journey and my transformation over the last 30 years. So let's roll.
Let's jump in. So we'll start with our first question that we always start with. How do you define success?
I've heard this question many times, and it's a very difficult question to answer, simply because it's a moving target, the definition, and it really depends on the stage of life you're in. So let's go back to when I was 8 years old. For me, success is my uncle's life. He was an immigrant who learned a skilled trade, opened up his own business, and became immensely successful. And what do I mean by successful? It was in the sense of monetary success. He lived in Toronto, renting a flat, to going to the burbs, buying a nice spread of land, building a custom dream home, having fancy cars, trips, beautiful clothes and jewelry, cottage. So that's how I thought success was. Yeah. So I geared most of my life thinking that's what success is. What's going to get me to where my uncle is? Okay, well, he learned a trade. I'm going to go to school, get an education, and I'm going to be like my uncle. Okay, so I did that. I educated myself. I worked hard. I got to the point in my life where, money was coming in and I can enjoy the finer things in life. A beautiful home, beautiful sports car, nice clothes and trips. And then, many years go by and it's like, is this what success is all about? And you think about it and I go, well, how many purses can you possibly have?
Yeah.
Traveling, on the other hand, the world is big. You can go on forever. So you're thinking there has to be more to success than the definition that I'm experiencing it. So then I really thought hard about it. And this takes me back to my father-in-law. And just before he passed away, he said, I'm passing away and I'm very happy because I'm passing the torch of the business to you and my son, which I know that my legacy is going to keep going.
Yeah.
So that's one of my new definitions of success is continuing our company legacy. Okay, our kids are involved, so the third generation is there.
Yeah.
But I'm taking steps where I want to see my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren take over from the previous generation.
Yeah. Because
they can go around and say, your great-great-grandfather, and we have pictures and we have videos of him. This is how he started. And that's creating history. And that's incredible. You can't buy that, right? Yeah. So that's one definition of success. And then the other definition of success is I look around and I'm in contact with a lot of people. I have employees, I have friends, I have people that I come into contact through the podcast. And I look at them and I say, you know what? They deserve every opportunity like I had to reach the success level that I have. So what can I do to make sure that they realize their dreams and their goals? So that's my second definition of success, ensuring everyone that comes into contact with me is brought to the level that I am at now.
Yeah, that is amazing. I think this is why I love your journey so much, because you've achieved success in so many different ways, right? Through business, through you also changing careers, through actually your family as well, as you're saying, passing on the torch.
Yes.
I think it's such an amazing story. And I think that's probably one of the greatest parts of success is you're building up the people around you, even the communities and the people who you're working with. But let's start with Could you describe a bit of your career path to where you are? I know you started off as a teacher, and then you transitioned into working in the trades as an artisan in woodwork and working the family business. Could you give us a little bit more about your career path to where you are now?
Absolutely. So when I was in my teenage years, I was completely sold on the fact that I would retire as a teacher, because I liked being the sculptor of young minds, because I thought it was really important that I instill the values, the experience, the knowledge that I had received growing up. Because growing up in an immigrant family, poor working class, we had to learn a lot of things to adapt to the environment and to get us to the next level. And I also realized that a lot of young kids weren't fortunate like me. They don't have a stable family. They don't have a mom and a dad. Some parents, are missing in the picture, or they might have substance abuse, or they might have their own personal issues. And school was the only safe haven for them. So I wanted to be that positive role model. And that for me was a passion. Unfortunately, it didn't play out the way I had dreamed it would, because the government got involved and politics came to play in the classroom. And you know what? As a person with integrity, I couldn't play out that role that the government wanted me to, because I was, given the responsibility of 90 students a day to instill core values that I believed in, not someone else's, and then have them graduate and then find out that my teacher lied to me. That was too much of a conflict with my conscience. So with a heavy heart, I said goodbye to the teaching career, and I'm like, holy smokes, I spent 5 years in university. What am I going to do now, right?
Yeah.
Because there's only limited things you can do with a teaching degree, right? Yeah. Private tutor, maybe in a private school, but I said no. And so I thought about it, and then out of the blue, my father-in-law said, hey, why don't you think about joining the business? And I said, who, me? I don't think so. And he goes, why not? Well, first of all, I'm not a woodworker. I don't know anything about running a business. I have no idea about production, manufacturing. And he said, you'd be the perfect candidate. And I go, why? Because you're like a blank canvas. You're not tainted with previous experiences. You're perfect in the fact that I can mentor you into the person that you need to become to be successful in these new roles. And he also said, think of a baby. When a baby is born, what do they know about the world that they're born into? Nothing. They don't know how to speak. They don't know how to eat. They don't even know how to talk. So what happens? They're taught. So just like a baby, anyone can be taught new skills and knowledge to get them into their next phase of life, as long as they're willing to learn. And I said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's strike down a deal.
Yeah.
Let's try it for a year. Done. So 1 year, I traded my professional clothes into t-shirt, blue jeans, safety boots, safety goggles, and I was serious. I was going to learn how to be a woodworker at our door manufacturing plant called Royal Door Limited that my father-in-law, Rosemary Cescolini, started in 1975. And he took me under his wing, introduced me to all the men on the shop floor, and said, this is my daughter-in-law, and she wants to be a woodworker like the rest of you. Well, not to be rude to my father-in-law, they welcomed me, but I know they snickered in the back, because they said, well, what is a woman doing in a guy's place?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so there was an element of being uncomfortable, but my father-in-law said, you know what? Don't worry about them. Just focus on what I teach you. So between my father-in-law and my husband, who's also a master artisan in woodworking, I learned all the tricks and all the techniques of getting raw pieces of wood, processing them, and making them into door pieces to make our doors. We use a mortise and tenon technique, so all our doors are handmade. So once I became pretty competent in my abilities, I was doing orders on my own, like whole house lots. Here, this is for this client, this is for that client. And I was able to do these things on my own. And, the guys kind of like looked and thought, wow, she's really serious about it. And then I started to gain a bit of respect from there.
Yeah. I mean, so that must have been, and I can't imagine what that transition was like. And obviously, you're going into a back of a shop. It's a very much like a patriarchal world.
Yes.
When you first made that transition, like, what are some of the lessons that you had to learn quickly? Like making the difference from going into the professional world into the trades. Like, what are some lessons that you learned that you think would be helpful to other people who may be wanting to take your path?
Well, I had to be very humble. Because a lot of the people I worked with did not have a university degree, barely a high school degree. So I couldn't have my nose in the air and say, hey, I'm better than you, I have 2 degrees, right? I had to bring myself down to their level. I had to ensure that my vocabulary was at their level, because they wouldn't understand what I would be saying if I was talking to them with larger words.
Yeah.
I dressed like them, I complimented things that they did. And if I had a question about production, I would ask them, and they would gladly teach me. And they were happy to see that, I think she's part of the team. Yeah. She really wants to be here. And then we started having also like group meetings once a week. And we would talk about production, especially, making things better. Yeah. That was always in our shop, very important concept where, you make a product, but how do we make it better? How do we make it faster? How do we change so that the clients always stay loyal to our product and not switch to the competitor's product? And we started talking, and we started giving input and ideas, and then I would come up with ideas. One of the ideas I came up with is we streamline a couple of production techniques where we're able to bring down the production time to as little as 2 hours. And with something that you can make in 2 hours, a lot of people took note, especially the movie industry. Yeah. They would be stuck for a door or a window, and they would say, where can we find one at this particular dimension? Because you could go to a box store, you wouldn't find the size you needed or the style. So movie industry like Hollywood or even Netflix started calling and saying, hey, can you produce this and get it down to Toronto ASAP, or we need it in Montreal or Vancouver? Yeah, we can do that, no problem. Yeah. And we started getting that reputation. We started getting more clients, and in particular the contractors that had to deal with break and enters. You had clients that were completely terrified that their house was broken into and they needed a front door ASAP, and the contractor would say, can I get something today? Because they don't want to spend the night with no front door. Absolutely. So then the reputation started building, and we started getting busier. And the guys saw that my contributions down the line made their jobs secure. Yeah. And so I started to be welcomed into the family.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're immediately able to come in and start to make an impact, right?
Yes.
But let me ask you, did you face any challenges when you went in, or did you struggle in any way kind of going through that transition, and certainly moving into like that kind of world, which you were not used to at all? Certainly worked with all the guys back there. And
the challenges I think came the first challenge was because it was a male populated shop. We had pictures of the Sunshine Girls, right? We had Playboy pictures, and it was kind of uncomfortable. I understand it was a guy's environment, and I don't think they were intentional because they were already up there. Yeah. It's not that they put them up on purpose. And I look at them and I go, but imagine if I wasn't who I was and I had hired a woman. Yeah. How would she feel? So I took it upon that perspective. So I looked at it. I didn't say anything, but I said, let me just play a little around with them to see if they get the point. So one day our local fire department came knocking on the door, and they had these beautiful calendars of beautiful firefighters with their 6-pack, and some of them were wearing very scant clothing. And I said, you know what, I'll take a few copies of those, right? And before everybody was at work, I hung them up next to the ones with the ladies, and they noticed really quickly, they're looking at each other, and you could see the words coming out of the mouth, like, what the, right? And so one guy actually had the nerve to say, how come you put those pictures up? You know, they make me feel uncomfortable. And I said, okay, so put yourself in my shoes. Yeah. How do you think I felt the first day when I walked in here? And he said, point taken. Yeah. And everything was taken down. Mm-hmm. So we were respectful. But if I didn't say anything, that would have been status quo. Yeah. So I had to muster up the courage to do something like that. Yeah. Right? Even if I would have used words in a nice way, I don't think they would have really understood how uncomfortable I felt. Yeah. But they got the point. The other challenges I had was they thought I was a spy for my father-in-law. They wanted to see if, maybe she was here to check on our work ethics. And maybe she's going to write us up and then we're going to get fired. You know, that was their greatest fear, but I wasn't there for that. So what they would do is we have a lot of machines that do different purposes. And before you start on any machine, the first step in safety is you have to check the settings to make sure all the parts are securely put on, especially cutters. Okay, cutters on shapers or even the planer. If they're not secured and they come off, you can lose a finger, a hand, or worst case scenario, you can get sliced open in the midsection. You can die. So they thought it was a good idea to adjust some of the settings on the machines so that when I made a piece, the piece would not come out as it was supposed to, right? But I remembered my husband and my father-in-law drilling in my head, make sure, because we're not going to be shadowing you all the time. And we don't want anything happening to you. I said, okay. So when I started working on my own, this is when they started messing around with the equipment. But I would check, cutters weren't put in, the wrong ones were put in, and then I would patiently take the tools, disassemble the machine, get the right part, put it back, and then there's always sample wood. You test it before you put the good piece of wood through, right? Mm-hmm. And they would never catch me on that. So they stopped after a while. Right? And so then the other things were like, I would work more efficiently than they would and faster, because when I was assembling or creating a piece, I would actually think about doing it even faster, even better. Yeah. And this bothered some of them, because that means if I set the pace, then they would have to follow suit as well. And a few of them would get upset and they say, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get us fired? And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, you're working too fast. Slow down the pace. We don't like you working at this pace. And I said, I'm sorry, but this is the pace that it's a reasonable pace, and this is the pace where we should be at. In fact, you're working too slow. And the slower you work, the less efficient we are, and you lose clients this way. And think of the big picture. If we lose clients and they go to our competitors, how does that speak for your job security? And they would think about it, and they said, you're right. So all you had to do with these challenges is you had to make sure that you spoke about it, or you took actions to correct them. And I wouldn't back down.
I think that's awesome. And I think there's a great lesson in there just to make sure you always check your work. Do you know what I mean? No matter what. And no matter the situation, make sure you're always checking your work and also coming in with an open mind to innovate like you did. And you came in and you're able to change the work ethic. You're able to change the way things were being done, which I think is awesome, to be able to walk into something completely new. So, I mean, obviously being a teacher, I would ask, did you have any resources that you utilized that helped you through that transition and to also come in and be able to streamline processes or, also just in terms of interpersonal, working with other people, like what resources helped you in that change?
Well, 30 plus years ago, honestly, there weren't a lot of resources for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we used our mentors. So anybody that had woodworking experience, I always spoke to them, whether they were a carpenter in a subdivision, you've got a rough carpenter, you have a finished carpenter, you'd speak to them. I'd speak to people that manufactured furniture. I would speak to even my competitors, because even though we were selling virtually the same product, we would always talk to one another about how the industry is going. We would go and purchase a space for a booth at the National Home Show every year. And that really gave us tons of experience because, the booth, we had shifts in manning it. So when it was my turn to take a break, I would walk through the National Home Show and I would speak to other people. I would get their cards. And we had to call back then. I couldn't send them an email, right? Or FaceTime or any of that stuff. So we would call or we would meet for a coffee and we would talk about things and they would share their experiences with situations and issues and we would do the same thing. My father-in-law, my husband, they were huge in helping me with certain things. And later on, there was also the Manufacturers Association for Exporters. And we became a member of that. And that put us together in the same room because it was always live meetups. We wouldn't do anything virtual because the technology wasn't invented yet, right? And you would meet 10, 15 people and they would be in your circle where you can use as resources. Like sometimes there would be some lumber mills that unfortunately either the equipment broke down or there would be fires and you couldn't get raw material. So you'd ask around, where do you buy your lumber? Who's your mill? How do I get this? Who's the salesperson? So we talked a lot through meetups and a few associations that are around. Then later on, when I moved into the office and I started speaking with our clients who were largely male clients, that included architects, contractors, and builders, asked all the questions I needed to get to the next stage.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like you're great at networking as well, just in terms of being able to reach out there and speak to a lot of people. So you've mentioned your father-in-law as being a great mentor. How did and also working with other people just in general in the industry as mentorship. Let's specifically talk about your father-in-law and how did he help you as a mentor? And, obviously, first of all, getting engaged and starting in the family business, but also being successful in your role. I feel like he played a big part in that. And could you speak a little bit more on that?
Yeah, my father-in-law, Florio, very patient man in the fact that he just loved sharing his knowledge. And you could feel his passion when you were side by side. And he would say many times, he goes, it's important that people impart their knowledge and experience to the next generation to ensure that that is never wiped from the face of the planet, right? Yeah. Like even if books are destroyed or the internet crashes, what you have up here and you keep passing it down, generations can never die. Yeah. So he was passionate to ensure that his knowledge was passed down. He didn't care whoever wanted the opportunity to learn, he would teach because he taught countless people that were fresh off the plane coming to Canada barely could speak English, and somehow he communicated with him to teach him a skill. So just seeing that with how he worked with other people made me really, really keen on extracting as much information as I could, because I knew as a person that I only had limited time with him. Then once he's gone, like, what am I going to talk to his picture frame? I need help here.
Exactly.
Right? So he would start with one aspect. He'd go and he would explain it. Today I'm going to explain this. You need to know the why. And with the why, you have your purpose. And then you come to the end of that lesson. And then you're not going to the next lesson until you completely understand the lesson before, because it's your building blocks to keep going. So whether it was in production, whether it was in the office, he, took everything down to levels. And he made sure that you graduated each level so that you could move on to the next area that you needed to learn to be accomplished in all these areas.
That's awesome. I mean, he sounds like such a great mentor, and I love that. It's something I've been speaking on lately on the show just itself, in regards to the importance of mentorship and how it can truly, change your course, and also just help you in terms of learning, in terms of being able to be successful just in general, because you get the opportunity of working with someone who has expertise and who has that knowledge, and who can, open up your eyes to seeing things in a completely different way.
Yeah, one really important thing about mentorship is I find a lot of people find a mentor that it has similar experience in what they're trying to gain. Like, so for example, if I'm a tech expert, and you have a young high school student that wants to learn and have a mentor, they gravitate towards someone that has expertise and only in that field. What made my father-in-law really versatile was the range of experiences he had, because he started his life in Canada, in Saskatchewan, working on the railroads. Wow. But he was a woodworker, trained in Italy, but he learned how to lay track in Saskatchewan, temperatures. And then he left and he came to Toronto, and then he learned how to build the subway system, the 400 series highways. And then he went into entrepreneurship. Wow. So he had so much experience that it didn't matter where you're coming from, male or female, how old you were. He had a lesson to teach you, because he was like a set of encyclopedias. He would just pick what needed to be taught to you at that particular moment. And that's what makes a mentor very invaluable, the variety of experiences they have.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like you're certainly going down that path, working in so many different fields as well, right?
I have still a lot to learn. Like, I was shortchanged because I wish he would have. He died when he was 85, but if he lived as long as my father, 91, I would have got 6 more years. That would have been a lot.
I love that. Could you please tell me more about Royal Door? I know that obviously this is what we've been speaking about quite a bit, and it was your father-in-law's company.
Yes.
He built it, and tell us more about Royal Door.
Royal Door was his dream of entrepreneurship. He realized that as he got older, that he couldn't work in construction, because construction is really tough on the body when you get older, especially the deep freezes we used to have in decades ago. We don't have it as much these days. So he thought that he would go back to his passion and create a product that he could make, and that was in need. And one of the things that he noticed in the market was all the doors that he saw in lumber yards were really flimsy, not made very well. So in the winter, you'd have wind and drafts going through the doors. And in the summer, if you had air conditioning, the cold air going through, it was not very well insulated. So he learned that technique, mortise and tenon, back in Italy. And he says, you know what? why don't I introduce it to the Canadian market? And what makes the mortise and tenon technique very unique is it was the first door that contained a full thickness panel of 1 inch. All the other doors that he saw, you had 1/2 inch. So imagine the double thickness, plus mortise and tenon means you have a male and a female part, and they go together like puzzle pieces. So by them going in perfectly, it creates no gaps between the wood pieces, so it's better insulated. A, it's got full thickness, and B, there's no gaps, so it's going to save you heating costs and air conditioning costs. So he started out, took all the money he had in the bank, rented a 4,000 square foot place in Vaughan, and he started to make doors by hand with a few pieces of equipment that he had and that he could afford, right? And he would make 1 door a day. By the end of the week, Saturday, he'd put them in his pickup truck and he'd be down in the city. And his first customers were New Canadians Lumber, Downtown Lumber. They're now Home Hardware.
Oh, wow.
And he knew the owners very well because they were immigrants like him. They were from Portugal. And they were trying to give New Canadians an opportunity to build, bring their products to their retail location, and try to sell it to the other immigrants. So he met up with the owners and he said, I produced this door. It's out of cedar. And I chose cedar because it's the best wood out there. It doesn't have a lot of resin. It's resilient to both heat and cold. That's why we use it in saunas. We use it for our decks. And it needs very little maintenance. And it will last 30 to 40 years. And I said, okay, we'll give it a try. Do you have any for display? And he goes, yeah, I have doors here. So, okay, leave them all here. So by the middle of the week, he would get calls and say, are you coming down on Saturday? I have some money for you. We sold all your doors. Can you bring some more down? And that's how he got started. And then it got very popular and he had to hire people to help him because he couldn't keep up with the sales, the delivering, and the product creation. He had to train people because no one really had his skill set. And then once he had competent people in the shop, he would go and sell. And that was for, a good 10 years. Then my husband, who turned 18, started, full-time in the business. And the reason why my husband started when he was 18, my father-in-law fell ill to a disease called Meniere's. And what happens is the chemical imbalance in your head goes off kilter, so you have dizzy spells, you have fainting spells, you vomit. So he couldn't drive and he couldn't work heavy equipment. So my husband was given the opportunity of, well, you can go to university. My husband wanted to be an accountant. Or you can forget about university and take over the business because I don't know how long this is going to last. I can teach you and mentor you when I'm well enough and we already have the guys in the shop. Or I understand if you don't want this for your life. And my son, while he was going to the shop as young as 8 years old, and he saw his dad work really hard and he liked it. So he took over the company at 18. And my father-in-law was, home most of the time. My mother-in-law was taking care of him. And when he could come in, he would come in. And my husband said, yeah, well, it was difficult because I didn't have all the skills my dad, and I made mistakes, but then I learned from the mistakes. And so from that point on, that's when my husband started to take greater responsibility. But over the years, my father-in-law got better. He saw a natural path, and he was loosely the term cured from Meniere's, where he could come back to work, and he finished the training for my husband.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so from there, my son said, Dad, you know what? I have ideas. I want to create other door series, exterior door series. Yeah. So rather than just the one style, they started and they expanded to several more. They started introducing other woods. And by that time, I walked into the picture.
Yeah. That's awesome. So tell us, I would love to hear, how did you play a part in regards to Royal Door's success? Yeah.
Well, this is really funny because I was at Queen's University becoming a teacher. And my parents decided that they were going to renovate the house while I was away. And they just had a few small things to choose. And one of them was doors. So I was home on a Saturday, and my dad said, we need your opinion on the doors for the home. You got the afternoon to come and see them? And I go, sure. So we drove to Royal Doors plant in Vaughan, and my dad, as he's driving, he goes, it's a really nice family-owned business. It's a father and a son, and I think the son is eligible. He's a bachelor.
Yeah.
And I looked at my dad. I go, Dad, do we need doors, or is this a setup?
Yeah.
Right? And he goes, no, we need doors. You saw the condition of the house, and they make really good doors. I said, okay, I'm cool with it. So we get there, and so my then father-in-law, he comes out, he welcomes us, and so he remembers my dad, and my dad says, well, this is my daughter. She came back from school. Can you show her the door styles that my wife and I were thinking about? And he goes, wait a second, let me get my son, because he, is better at describing this. And then my husband came out, and then all of a sudden the dad's disappeared. and he introduced himself. Hi, my name is James. And I said, I'm Rosemary. And he goes, what brings you to the neighborhood? I go, I think my dad's trying to set me up here. So let's just play with it. And he goes, yeah, I feel that we got trapped. But we eventually did do the door purchase, and my husband personally delivered them to our place, and we had them all installed and stuff like that. And then he said to me, when you come back, do you want to go out for a movie? And I said, okay, sure. And I said, I'll be back on February 21st. Because it's my mom's birthday.
That's a very specific date.
Yeah, it was a specific date. And I didn't think anything of it, because I was in Queens, university life. And I was dating other guys, and not steadily dating, but I was just a typical university student, having fun, enjoying my time away. And so I get back from time for my mom's birthday weekend, and I'm there, and the phone rings. My brother answers, and he says, hey, Ro, there's a guy on the phone. And unfortunately, we didn't have cell phones, the ones on the wall, right? The corded ones. And he says, a guy named James on here. He's looking to talk to you. And he goes, who is this guy, right? I'll handle it. Move along. And I couldn't believe he actually remembered, because it was like 6 weeks ago, right? He says, are you still open for going out? And I said, sure. And he goes, what about tomorrow? Which was a Sunday, because he didn't work. And he picked me up, and we dated, and then a year later, we ended up getting married.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so yes, so then he worked at the door company, and I was teaching, right? And so that's basically how we started off. And then when we had that unpleasant situation at the school level, and that's when I started talking with him and my father-in-law, and that's when I was invited into the family business. My husband's an only child, so he welcomed the help, because he was saying, okay, exterior doors are great, but I think we need to pivot and change, because at that time, back in the early 90s, steel and fiberglass stores were making their way into the market, and the marketing was brilliant because people really thought that steel and fiberglass were better than wood doors. I beg to differ, because back in the pioneer days, we had wood doors, and we deal with projects for the city of Toronto for historical projects. The doors are in mint condition. And they're over 100 years old, and that's a testament of time. Whereas steel and fiberglass, now they actually get obliterated with our extremities and temperatures. So I said, okay, so what do you want to do? He goes, I think we should introduce interior door line. And I go, okay. So he said, get a scratch pad, sketch what you think would be in things, right? And my husband and I, we would go to Europe for trade shows, and we'd also go for family vacation because we have a lot of relatives there. And we would take a look at the doors in Italy. And sometimes we would travel to France or Germany, and we would take note, and we started taking sketches. And then I'd go back to my father-in-law and say, do you think we can make this door? And some of the designs scrapped right away, and he explained why. And it came down to the fact that they didn't have structural integrity. The ones that were good, we started to produce them. And then we had sales representatives that would go and visit our retailers, our contractors, and say, these are the new door series that we've produced. So not only can we do your front door, your garage doors, but now we're playing inside, so give us a try. And hence the birth of the interior door line.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, obviously, you know, it's a family business, and now you're working with your husband as well. What are some challenges that you faced? Like, you know, obviously working in a family business, starting to build that out, and what helped you be successful?
You know what, I think the family business and being a part of it helped with my relationship with my father-in-law and my husband. Because when I worked as a teacher, if I wasn't coaching a team, I'd be home at like 3:30. My husband wouldn't get home until 6. And you're like thinking, what is he doing? Like, doesn't he have like a 9-to-5 job like everybody else? And you get a little frustrated, and you wanted to do things after work and you couldn't. But then when you're actually in the family business and you see how 8 to 9 hours go by in a blink of an eye, you understand that. So you learn to be patient, okay? And you also, any challenges you have, well, if you see your husband or your father-in-law or another person in the business having a challenging moment or an obstacle, we talk it out. So why are you upset? What's going on that's, you know, and they'll tell you this. Okay, I had equipment failure. I can't find the part, and we have to order it overseas. It's going to take 6 months to get here. It's going to really mess up production. Okay. Well, out of the machines we have here, can't we retrofit something to produce that part temporarily? And we come up with solutions. So challenges are no longer seen as challenges. It's just, oh, well, it's just a little bump. Let's figure it out. So it helps with the day-to-day runnings of the business go smoother.
And so I feel like, or from what I'm hearing, is you have this like naturally great work ethic and ability to be able to solve challenges. Did your upbringing play a part in you learning, the ways of dealing with challenges or helping you be successful in general?
Yes, upbringing had a lot to do with that. So going back to my parents from Italy, grade 5 education, they had no skills, right? And they took any job that they were offered. And they were grateful for it, right? My dad jumped into construction because it was, that's where all the opportunities were. And you would probably make 10 times the wage of someone working, say, in a factory or landscaping. And my mother worked in a factory producing hot dogs. So they understood that they had to be organized, they had to be disciplined, right? When you started work at 7:30, you had to be ready to work at 7:30, not shuffle in at 7:30 and settle down and start working at 8. So that was the first thing, punctuality, reliability. Like there were a lot of times that my parents would get sick, right? Because they didn't have the money to buy the proper nutrition, but they went to work. A, they couldn't let the boss down. B, they couldn't afford to stay home. So it was imperative. So you learn that loyalty, that work ethic, responsibility, that people depended on you. And then because my parents weren't home a lot, I was the latchkey kid. He'd come home, you had maybe a shoelace with a key tied around, and it was either my brother or myself that would come home first, open up, make sure we locked the door. No one was allowed to come and visit. And my mother would have a list of things for me to do, whether it was laundry, start dinner, and I was a little kid, like 5 years of age. I would do a few things, and then my brother, who was 7 years older than me, he would help out more. And then when my parents came home, we tried to make it as inviting as possible for them because they were tired. And they would tell us how their day was. They said, this guy didn't show up and I ended up having to do the work for him, even though that wasn't my job, but I had to because everything was time sensitive and we wouldn't get the next job if we didn't meet the timeline. And I'd probably get fired, so I couldn't risk it. And then they would say things like, it's important to get a good education to ensure that you can communicate properly. Because one of the hardships that they suffered is not having the command of the English language. They couldn't communicate the fact that they weren't being paid fairly. So a person that was doing the same job was getting more money than them, so they were underpaid. If they were working overtime, they weren't getting the overtime pay. But how do you communicate that? And so they said, well, at least I have a job and it takes care of, our basic necessities of life, and I have a better future for our kids. So definitely I would work hard at every opportunity, and just looking at even the people in our neighborhood that started off like my parents, as they acquired skills and knowledge, they started to move away from our neighborhood. They were moving to better sections of the city. Why? Because they were actually making more money. They were moving up. And that's where you want to be. You don't always want to stay in the bottom.
That's awesome. There's one thing that I really admire about you, which is your confidence. And I know we've talked about this. You post great videos on your page, Only Women Entrepreneurs. And you spoke really, really well about, how to build confidence and what confidence is. For you, I'd love to ask, where does your confidence come from, or how did you start to build that confidence that you have and to be able to get to where you are, to walk into, a shop and, hold your own, around all that, to be able to manage a business as well, and to have a family. And then to now, obviously I see you speak at conferences. I see you help people, you help develop people as well. Which is a confident thing because you've built that skill and now you're able to pass that along. So I'd love to ask, how did you build your confidence and where does that come from?
The confidence comes from when I was really young. Okay, so when I was 8 years old, my dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he was sidelined from working many years. Okay, he had to go through surgery and treatment, and he wasn't well enough to go back to work. So my mother really struggled to pay the mortgage, and we were fortunate that we didn't end up on the street. My brother and I thought we need to do more than just household chores. We need to contribute to the family income. And so we started off with cute little things like selling lemonade. You know, we made a few bucks and we gave it to our mother and say, here, buy some groceries, help pay for the bills. But then my brother said, we can do other stuff that will really bring in more money. Let's think about the services that we can offer that people need and they're willing to pay. Because lemonade stand, it works once or twice, but people are not going to buy lemonade every day from you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he said, well, we already mow our own lawn for mom and dad. Why don't we just charge our neighbors to mow their lawn once a week? And so this is where like, oh, then we have to go and knock on their door, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And man, we were scared. Like I was only 8 years old, and most of my neighbors, like I really didn't talk to them unless they had kids, right? And it was either sir or ma'am or whatever. And we thought, well, we have to do it. We don't have a choice. So I started with our first neighbor, and I said to her, you know, and I'm stumbling, and she was kind of a little impatient. What do you want? I'm trying to make dinner for my husband, basically. She goes, my brother and I are offering lawn cutting services, and we would love to cut your lawn for $5 a week. And she said, let me speak to my husband. Come back tomorrow. And I said, oh, I didn't get the sale. Darn. So then we did the whole street, and some of us thought we were adorable and cute, and automatically they said, okay, show up on Saturday, but I want it cut at this particular time. And then I go, oh, I didn't even bring anything to write with. So now they want a schedule.
Yeah.
So you learn from that experience. So they, you know, number 39 wants it at 10 a.m. and wants it cut diagonally. This person wants it horizontally. So you learn these things. Going back to people that said no at first, going back and saying, you know, I can do a really good job. You know, Mr. Jones down the street, I just cut the lawn there. Just take a look outside your veranda and see how nice it came. And they would look, and they actually appreciated that we had the courage to do that. And we started getting contracts. So that built our confidence. And then we had work to show. So from that, we started walking dogs. Then we would remove snow and deliver newspapers. We were underage, so we had to do things that we could possibly do. And then when we got older, of course, we applied for our social insurance number, and then I started working. My first job was at Canada's Wonderland, and I worked in the kiddie section, Hanna-Barbera Land, and I was given the responsibility of running Pebbles hot dogs. So if you like the Flintstones, Pebbles hot dogs. That was my responsibility, and I had to cook hamburgers, hot dogs, and French fries. And I had to learn that. I had to manage money because we didn't do credit back then. And I had to figure out when to cook these items because there were certain times of the day where it got very, very busy. And I ran the whole show myself. And you got compliments, right? So this is where you build confidence by trying things out. Like, I didn't want to go knock on my neighbor's door and ask him to do this. Like, I was terrified of dogs because I got bitten by a dog. But here I was walking 4 dogs at a time, 2 each hand, and they were adorable. I learned to love dogs. I overcame my fear of dogs because of that experience. So, and then the animals themselves felt safe and secure with me because I was confident. Like, look at me. I'm not afraid of them. Look how beautiful these creatures are. And we're going for a walk. And then in the back of my mind is, I'm helping my parents, which is the greatest thing. And I even saw the stress from my parents just kind of like wipe away because the extra income did make a difference, right? It wasn't like we would eat pasta every single day because that was the cheapest thing to buy. In that day and age, we would be able to go back and have our hot dogs and have our once in a while steak, which was fantastic. So what I say to confidence is don't ever try and avoid new opportunities. Like, I could have easily said to my father-in-law, nope, I'm not doing that. I don't know how to read tape measure. I'm pretty stupid when it comes to being an entrepreneur. No, I didn't shy away from it. I tried it. Even if you don't have an interest in something, try it anyway, because you can surprise yourself. And that's where the confidence comes. And my confidence became huge when I actually mastered becoming a woodworker. Because first of all, I'm a female.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a female professional. You know, when you tell this story to people and they said, why would you want to do that? I go, I've had a great life because I can make anything out of wood. Yeah. Right? I got all the machines.
It's such a rare skill, right?
It's an incredible skill.
Yeah.
And I tell you, if I'm stuck in the middle of Nunavut, okay, and there's forestry, I can cut down my own trees.
You'll be fine.
And I can make tables. I'll make something. Right? I can build my own shelter. I'm not afraid. I've got survivor skills. Right? I'm not going to die. Right? From it. And that's how my confidence just snowballed. It's one successful accomplishment after another. Start small. Right? And then slowly build it up, but also try to give yourself like goals. Like, okay, we're in this month. In 4 weeks, I'm going to try to master this. And it could be something like, you know, reading a self-help book and then applying those skills to other people and teaching them. Well, you finished a book, and then you're applying your knowledge and teaching someone, you're going to get more confidence.
Have you always been a naturally inquisitive person? And I mean, obviously, since you started little businesses when you're like 8 years old, have you always had that entrepreneurship kind of bug in you?
Yeah. My husband too. Like we have that need to know. Yeah. And it's because my parents did a lot of things. It always piqued our interest. Like my dad, he would till a piece of lawn, make it into a garden, and then, you know, plant seeds and then nurture it. And then you'd be eating produce from it. And then you'd look at the plants every single day, how they changed, how they evolved. My parents also, they would go to a farm up in the burbs and they would purchase livestock, like chickens. They would lay eggs. So you would go and you'd watch these eggs, like these hens laying the eggs, and then you'd get them, you'd have them for breakfast. The other things they did was, my dad was a farmer in Italy, so he was used to having livestock. He had sheep and he had pigs, and they would make processed food from it. So one time we went to a farm, but then I didn't want to go anymore because I kind of felt sorry for the animals. My dad and my uncle, they purchased a pig and one lamb, and inside the garage, those animals were slaughtered and they were cleaned. The meat was processed. My uncle took half, we took half, and that was our meat for the winter. It was really good. That's awesome, but for me personally, I don't think I could do that. But I admired my parents for doing that. That was incredible. And they said, you know, this is food. This was put here on the planet for our enjoyment. It's bad when you waste it or you abuse the animal, but if it's for you to use as nutrition and for your family to provide, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like you've had so many great people in your life to teach you along the way, right?
It has been a great ride for me.
That's awesome. So let's jump into this. I'd love to learn more about only women in entrepreneurship. Could you give me a little bit more on that?
Only Women Entrepreneurs.
Only Women Entrepreneurs.
Short for O.
Okay, yeah.
And honestly, I was going to call it Only Women Network.
Only Women Network, okay.
But unfortunately, Oprah has the rights on that, so I couldn't get it. Yeah. So, and the reason why I coined it was just to pique women's interest in alternative careers. I'm on a mission to rewrite the narrative of women's careers. Because 2 weeks ago even, I was speaking to a young lady. She was just entering university this fall, will be her first year, and she was all excited about it. And I said, so what was grade 12 like? Like, what were your career choices? And it was the same choices for me 30 plus years ago. Well, you go to university and you get a degree and you get a white collar job. And if university is not for you, well, you can go in the trades. And then I kind of got excited. Okay, maybe they're going to talk about, real trades other than hairdressing school. Not that I have anything against hairdressing school or being a nail technician, because we need them, absolutely. But it was the same thing. And I go, and they never talked about anything else? She said, no. Well, what else is there? And I said to her, there's so many other careers that you could have done and that you could have tried out, and you would have received free instruction and had a good paying job when you finished. And she said, how so? Well, there's something that's called alternative careers in the skilled trades. Skilled trades meaning manufacturing and construction. Then I told her about what I did, and she said, wow. She was taken aback. And she goes, well, why wouldn't they want to present these opportunities to us? That sounds amazing. I go, because they're still using the same playbook that they had years ago, and they're not changing it. People in our government and people that are in the classroom, they like the status quo. They don't want to change, first of all, because change is hard. And the second reason is because these people have been in their positions for a long time, they don't have a grip with the market. Whereas people like me see what's going on in the landscape, and you need to equip young people with skills that are marketable. And hence the creation of Only Women Entrepreneurs. I'm out on a mission to provide information, provide guidance, instruction for any woman, whether you're 17 to whatever, 70, looking for a career in construction and manufacturing, because that's where all the jobs are now. People are saying, oh, the layoffs are happening because the economy is slow. But I kid you not, you will get a job as a carpenter, a plumber, or an HVAC technician right now. Why? Because we are experiencing something called a gray tsunami, where people that are in their 60s and 70s are retiring at huge volumes. And those gaps are not getting filled. So if you have breakage in your air conditioning unit, well, we don't have enough HVAC technicians to take care of that. We don't have mechanics to fix cars. And so wait times are going to get longer. Skilled people are going to pick and choose who they want to do work for. And it's normally the larger clients. So if I'm a landlord and I own multiple residential units, I think all the trades would line up to work for me, because that would be a full-time job, 24/7. Whereas if I'm just a homeowner and I have problems with my plumbing, I'm not going to get that plumber. And if you do, you're going to pay extra money. So you're going to have a secure job, you're going to have endless opportunities, and all your training is going to be picked up by the government, because we're in desperate need of that. So I'm trying to put that message out there for women, and yes, men are more than welcome to join, because in the next several years we're going to have severe critical shortages in the trades. And I don't think our society is going to run as smooth as it is now. We're already seeing breakages and slowdowns. and people are going to get frustrated.
I think you're totally right. And that's something I'm hearing about quite a bit as well, is the trades are going to be, the most important field to be working in within the next 10 years for sure. And that's so awesome how you've got this company that's helping women or men as well in able to get started in working in the trades and actually learn more about the trades. And I understand that you're having a workshop, or you're starting a workshop and a mentorship program in August. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, we were going to do just a one-shot workshop, but the feedback we got was, well, it would only be like a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity, whereas they want stuff to continue ongoing. So we decided to do a workshop series where it's going to be 5 workshops that are virtual. So we have more people to participate, not only in Canada, but this message has to go worldwide because it's applicable everywhere.
Exactly.
And the last thing is we're going to have one live meet in person. Okay. So if anybody that is attending the virtuals and they want to meet one of the speakers that we are featuring in the virtual workshop series, well, they'll be there live, and you can perhaps hook up with them and receive a mentor to help you through your journey. So it's going to start in the fall, and it's going to work its way to next year. So we have the topics. There's 5 areas that we think are really important that need to be covered. The first is where do I start? So do you want to be an entrepreneur, or do you want to pursue a career in the skilled trades? How do you figure that out? And that's the question we're going to get answered in the very first workshop. And once we figure that out, we start providing you with resources and mentors to help you, to coach you through that journey. And what's really unique about it is it's individualized. I'm not getting a whole cohort of people and doing a cookie cutter program. This is good for all of you. No. I want to get to know you on a one-to-one basis. I want to know where you are at in your life, what your past experiences have been, whether they're good or bad. Because not only do your life experiences set you on the path for success, it's going to mold you into being the person in the future. And if there's something that's holding you back, this is when the mental mindset component of the workshop takes effect, where we need to overcome the mental barriers that you yourself hold, because that's what's going to hold you back. Everybody else, they're not going to hold you back. It's you, yourself, right? And then the second workshop series is going to deal with the legal and financial management of those 2 options. So say if I want to start a business and I have no money. So what are we going to do for you? Well, we're going to set you up with angel investors. We're going to come up with a business plan, and we're going to find either private funding, and that could be person of the private realm, or we could approach banks, because there's a lot of startup programs, and there's government programs. We're going to put you into contact, so we do applications to get you the funding to get you started. And then once you get your funding, you have to understand how to manage it, right? So the accounting component has to come in. As well as other legal aspects is when you do start a company, what type of business entity are you thinking of? Limited partnership, a corporation? Those are a lot of questions you need to have answered, because once you start with a solid foundation, everything else gets easier. If you start sloppy on the bottom, then it's always going to be cleaning up your messes, and it's never going to be running smoothly. So in terms of person that is pursuing a skilled trade, it's important that they receive funding again. And we have a lot of colleges that are actually partnering with our initiative, and they're going to come and present and let potential candidates know what their colleges specialize in. So if I want to get into a carpentry program, there's a specific college that deals with it, and then you will be set up with mentors there. And even if you tell them, well, I have no money to pay for it, well, hold on, we'll get you the help. Okay. We'll make sure that you enroll. We'll get you to work. While you're training, we're going to get you to get paid. And then once you graduate, you're going to have an employer that's going to pay you X amount of dollars. So you're going to be guaranteed success, either option, because we're going to start you off on the right foot. And then the third workshop is going to focus on e-commerce or retail. So in terms of the entrepreneurial side, which system works best for my company? Right? It could be either or it could be both. In my aspect, we work well with both. We have the brick and mortar component, but we have sales representatives that go all across the province, sell our product, deliver our product, but then we have the internet. We have companies like Wayfair and Amazon that are interested in featuring our products on their sites because we have one-of-a-kind products that nobody else can offer. So we'll figure out who your audience is, how to target them, and which way is the best to sell to them. And then you're thinking, okay, so how is that going to work for someone in the skilled trades? Well, the skilled trades, I recall when my uncle, the successful one, he started out his time as a skilled millwright. He worked for someone else Monday to Friday, but to earn extra money, he would go and offer his services to other people. And you can do that today. You can work for a company Monday to Friday, but if you've got available hours, how do you market yourself on the internet? Or can you set up a location? Not only are you marketing your skilled services, so if I'm a plumber, maybe I can also open up a retail location where I sell fixtures, and I can stand by this brand. So not only can you sell the fixtures, but you can also install it. So you're double ending it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. What a great program. I mean, we can find it on your website, right?
It's actually going to be available soon on the website. So to stay up to date, just follow us at Only Women Entrepreneurs.
At Only Women Entrepreneurs. What a great program. I mean, the value that you're going to be providing these people, it's so detailed, and I think it's so robust too, because you're really going to help people along this journey. So you definitely want to check this out. Unfortunately, we're running so short on time, but we definitely will have Rosemary back. Thank you so much for being on today. My last question would be, if you had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh, my favorite is one local young man, and it's Drake's song, Started from the Bottom.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on. Just another great experience speaking with you and learning about your phenomenal story. Again, we will have you on. So thank you so much for coming on. Take care and take it easy, Toronto.